Hello, everyone. Really excited for the panel that we have ahead today. We have an amazing group of 4 speakers today to talk about Web3. Definitely, Web3 is one of the most commented topics of this 2021. And we're really excited to learn more about this topic, which is super exciting. Conor, welcome on stage. You'll be moderating the session.
Thanks, Daniel. Hi, everyone. I hope you're having a fantastic conference so far. So I'm Conor Svensson. I'm going to be hosting this panel today with these great other people that we have here. Just to tell you a tiny bit about myself before we go on to the speakers and the body of this session. So I'm Conor Svensson. I'm the founder and CEO of Web3 Labs. Web3 Labs is a blockchain technology company. We write open source software such as the well-known and widely used Web3J library for working with Ethereum blockchain. We also provide products and services such as our Epirus Blockchain Explorer and work with organizations like Consensus, Vodafone, Microsoft, JP Morgan, and so on their strategic blockchain initiatives. I'm also the author of a book which has come out this week called The Blockchain Innovator's Handbook, which is a leader's guide for understanding and working with this technology. So for those of you who want to really get more across some of this stuff or know people who do, I do, shameless plug just to say this book's just come out and hopefully there'll be some useful stuff there. But more importantly, I'm really excited to introduce the other panelists that we have here today. So the topic of this session, as I'm sure you're all aware, is Web 3.0, how to prepare for a privacy-driven future. And yeah, I think we've got some great representation from some people who are working on some really good initiatives here, both in terms of the base platform layers, but also in terms of seeing the applications that can be built out on it too, because it's that combination of both in terms of, the platforms are interesting and cool, but it's also the value that people are creating on top of it is really important too. So I'm really glad that we've got representatives from both sides there to join us on the panel today. So we're going to do a round of introductions for the different panelists, and then we'll get going. So we'll start off with Andra, if you'd like to start by introducing yourself and what you do.
Sure. My name is Andra Georgescu. I am the co-founder of Distrikt, a decentralized social network that wants to empower users to take control and ownership over their digital presence. Distrikt is a fairly new project. It's being supported and maintained by the Open Internet Foundation, a Swiss not-for-profit with the mission to promote the expansion of an open internet through the development of digital products and services like Distrikt that have a focus on empowering the user. So the idea itself is not new. People have been experimenting with this concept of a decentralized social network for a while with varying degrees of decentralization. But what is new is that is the implementation of Distrikt because it lives 100% on the internet computer. And because of the unique capabilities of the internet computer, it relies on no centralized infrastructure like AWS, which we think is quite empowering for a decentralized social network.
Oh, thank you, Andra. And I think that's a good segue into our introducing our next panelist, Jens, as well, who will certainly touch on the internet computer and what that is and what it means. But Jens, over to you.
Yes, so I'm Jens Groth. I'm a cryptographer by training, and I'm a director of research at DFINITY. So DFINITY built the internet computer platform that Distrikt is running on, and many other apps are running on. And we continue to support the internet computer. And I think one of the main advantages of the internet computer is that it's a platform where you can build dApps on, which runs at web speed and is powerful enough to host web on-chain.
Thank you, Jens. And then finally, Siddharth as well, who is working on one of what are called the Layer 0 blockchain platforms. Over to you, Siddharth.
Thanks, Conor. Pleasure to be here. So as Conor mentioned, Polkadot is a layer 0 protocol, which I'm representing here on the call. I work for a team called Parity Technologies and based here out of London. So Polkadot is a layer 0 protocol trying to connect all various different layer ones, and the one of the only bets against chain maximalism in the industry. We have substrate native blockchains, which then could be private permissioned, public permissioned, or public chains, and there are 200 plus of them, and it's a growing ecosystem of parachains and para threads, which provide a lot more composability across. Pleasure to be here on the panel.
Thank you, Siddharth. And so just before we ask our first question for the panelists, do as well, if you as an audience member have any questions you'd like them to answer to, please stick them in the chat too, because it's always more fun when we can make these a bit more interactive. And the good thing anyway about being virtual like this, not only in terms of being able to bring together so many great people to talk, but it's also the fact that everyone can stick those questions in the chat. They don't have to put their hands up, and we can see them and hopefully more easily get to them all as well. So we do encourage you to ask any questions that you might have. So I wanted to start off by really asking a question for everyone to talk to, and this is how Web3 actually provides a fresh approach to building platforms, networks, and communities, because there's a lot of different interpretations in terms of how people perceive Web3 being a force for change over the coming years, and yeah, there's many different views on this. So, Andra, I'd love to hear what your view is on how Web3 kind of changes things. Oh, sorry, you're muted.
I'm sorry, guys. I was starting pretty strong there, but you didn't hear it. I was saying that Web3 has a pretty radical value proposition, because it changes the relationship between a platform and its users, and turns the average user into an active participant and a decision maker, and they can dictate the way they want to be treated by the platforms that they use. And in my view, they should, because the users themselves are the only value a network has. And in the case of social networks, they are the reason why Facebook is a network and not a website, for instance, right? And to empower these communities to form around similar values and goals is one of the biggest promises of Web2, because having the power over the product instead of the product having power over you is, again, a very radical shift. And this community can be any type of organization and business, as we've seen with different DAOs that are starting to emerge. And basically, the shift of power, I think, is the biggest promise and the biggest thing that Web3 brings, but also incentivization, because it's a very powerful tool that can help kickstart the growth of a product in ways that weren't really possible before.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that idea of shifting the power is just a really key tenet there. Jens, well, what about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm looking at this from a platform perspective, as they are one platform, right? So I think there's a lot of value in saying that users own their own data, and also in tokenization, which enables people to do active participation and also be co-owners of what the apps that they're engaging with, right? I guess I'll be a little skeptical. I think the future will show whether we really manage to shift the balance, right? Because I think there's still potential power plays between developers of apps and the end users who are using those apps. So I guess Web3, I think at least what we're aiming for is that it's not the platform that's the owner of the data.
Yeah, it's definitely a potential challenge, and I think we should probably talk some more about this shortly. And then finally, Siddharth as well. I think it would be also great to talk about what layer 0 is in the context of all of this too, in addition to your own perspective on it too, because we're certainly, with our representation, we've got builders of layer 0, layer 1, and then we've got an application being built on top as well. So it's I think it's helpful to educate the audience a bit too with this.
Thanks for that, Conor. So definitely, as in Web3 Foundation, which essentially is led by Dr. Gavin Wood, is an entity, is the Swiss nonprofit entity, right, which works essentially very closely with Polkadot and Parity technologies, right? So essentially, the way we are seeing things in Web3 is if Web 2 was kind of read and write of web, and Web3 might be read, write, and own, right? And with ownership, that might be assets, but then that's also governance, that's also distributed rights, that's also a kind of co-building, co-responsible, right? And you see that happening certainly on Polkadot as well, where there is an on-chain governance. There are motions and proposals, people vote on them, and the community votes on them. Only a few weeks ago, we went through a rebranding in which none of Parity employees or Web3 Foundation or the council members knew what the logo or the future logo of Polkadot could be. And it was a purely decentralized decision between the token holders and the protocol itself. Such is the power of these decentralized networks, and we see them kind of evolve from there, right? Like where I think Web3 can help a lot more, or we see that going, is bringing all these communities, individuals, businesses together who might not have been able to interact with each other in the past, right? That's generally the promise of what blockchain brings together, on how do you bring together mistrusting or non-trusting entities without a trusted third party or TTP in between, right? And we see that going forward with various different blockchains being able to talk to each other, being able to depend on each other, or have composability across each other via, let's say, a layer 0 protocol such as ours, or bridges, or cross-chain messaging, or a bunch of other tools that that we are building, or the community is building, that being achieved a lot more. So such communities then can interact with each other, depend on each other, and coexist and co-thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. And hearing the idea of a decentralized rebranding as well, it's kind of, you go back sort of 5 years ago, and to talk about that, people would be like what? It's as that fit together. One thing though, I was keen, just especially given though Polkadot's position in this space, though, what is it that makes it a layer 0 as opposed to a layer 1? People talk a lot about layer 1 blockchains platforms. Now Jens certainly has spoken about the internet computer as a layer 1. Ethereum's a well-known layer 1. Bitcoin network can be considered a layer 1 as well. And so what is it about Polkadot that makes it a layer 0?
Well, of course, some of it is technical and some of it is just positioning, right? So Polkadot, if it does one thing, it's kind of a dumb relay layer between different chains, right? So technically then for whatever that relay layer is communicating, then needs to be via those layer 1s, right? So the way we saw the industry, if you go back to kind of Vitalik's white paper, or Dr. Gavin Wood when he was the CTO of Ethereum, right? We had a concept of, let's say, the world computer, which was then crafted within Ethereum. And then we saw Ethereum as kind of this world computer where anything could be computed, but it was Turing complete but had limited opcodes, right? And we saw the scalability issues there. So if you fast forward from a couple of years from that, what happened was people started creating specialized chains, which were very good either in industry-specific functions or privacy functions. So you had Zcash, Filecoin, VeChain, Hyperledgers of the world, Cordas of the world, and whatnot, right? So we saw like limited opcodes being solved, special functionalities being produced, but then again, isolation, data, identity, assets were getting trapped in these chains. As bigger corporates, regulators were looking at these platforms, right? It was crucial for them that they made the right choice, because otherwise they're getting a vendor lock-in, right? We saw that happening. So where we see Polkadot kind of coming in is still helping create and blossom those individualized, specialized chains. And we have a 200+ building within our ecosystem, right, for private permissioned all the way to public chains built on Substrate. And then Polkadot coming in as a layer 0, which provides the network security, provides a platform for all these specialized chains or layer 1s to interact with each other via various different mechanisms, and then be the kind of network security economic guarantee so that different chains do not necessarily, or different layer 1s do not necessarily need to compete with each other, right? So for the Substrate-based chains that want to be Polkadot native or want to depend on Polkadot for their economic or network security, those would be the parachains and the parathreads, which then get a little more committed bandwidth. But then for the Ethereums and the Bitcoins and Zcaches who might not be moving to our stack so soon, there are bridges and cross-chain messaging and common good parachains and other infrastructure pieces.
Got you. So it's that interconnectedness that it provides there, and as you kind of said, the routing between all these different blockchains as well.
As well as the base economic security or the network security, if you can call it.
And so moving back up the stack now, we're just going back up to layer 1, and I think it would certainly be helpful too for Jens to just, if you're able to fill in just some of the gaps about what the internet computer is in terms of how it, what makes it different, and then I think there'll be a natural segue to talk a bit about why that's a good thing for Distrikt as well. But let's say, Jens, if you want to talk a little bit more about what the internet computer is and what it does.
Sure. So we think of the internet computer as being sort of the third generation, Bitcoin being the first generation that had sort of like very limited functionality, but sort of proved the concept of consensus via proof of work, right? Ethereum as sort of like the next step that sort of had general smart contracts that you could deploy, right? And the internet computer sort of delivers super powerful smart contracts, right? So we have so you can, it's powerful enough that you can run big applications, big dApps on it, right? So you can have smart contracts. You can either have them sort of like very fixed and locked down. So this is like a smart contract. I can verify the code. I cannot change it. But you can also have like mutable smart contracts, right? Where you can simply run it as an application and you can update it along the way and sort of change the functionality of that smart contract, right? And then you can host web on it. So the typical way of developing that is you have like a front end you serve to the user, right? That they just get via their browser and then they interact with the back end, and all of this is done on chain, right? And the upgrades you can do to the smart contracts is also something you just do on chain. We can also change the internet compute itself on chain through voting. So it's a very powerful platform for hosting smart contracts.
Yeah, and this idea of third generation opens up new opportunities as well for new types of business to exist in a decentralized manner. And of course, one such business is Distrikt. And so, Andra, I know you've provided like a high level about it, but what is it specifically that's made you guys say, yeah, now's the right time to build this out? And from speaking before, I understand that there were specific features of the world computer that were almost an enabler to be able to achieve what you as a company wanted to be able to achieve with respect to a decentralized social network.
Yeah, like I said, there have been attempts at making a very popular decentralized social network with varying degrees of decentralization when you look at infrastructure, maybe user governance, depending on the dimension that you want to approach. But what we really found interesting is having a social media network that doesn't rely on any centralized third party. So Distrikt has the entirety of the app on chain, back and front end, including all the assets that the users upload and the content that they generate. And we do support photos and GIFs, not video yet, but it's on the roadmap for a future implementation. So that in itself was very appealing to us, because it was something that, at least in my knowledge, it hasn't been done. And it came with its own challenges, but most of all, it came with a lot of fixes to the current challenges of Web 2 that are mostly related to privacy, data ownership, data management, treating the user as a person rather than as a KPI. And it's something that we really wanted to put out there into the world. We wanted this alternative to exist. And actually, we came over the idea of creating Distrikt from a demo app that the DFINITY Foundation showcased a while back. And it was called Linked Up because it was supposed to be an alternative to LinkedIn, and show how easy it was to build a mass market application on top of the internet computer. And the article itself kind of suggested that this is just a demo app, but if the community would like to take it and run with it, that would be cool. So me and my co-founder were like, we are the community. And we went and took on the challenge. And Distrikt has launched in July. We have the Android app in the Google stores since September, and hopefully the iOS app in the App Store by the end of the year. So, and right now, if you want some metrics, we're around 70,000 users and growing pretty fast, I'm happy to say. So when it comes to why we chose the internet computer, we didn't see any alternative for this particular experiment that we wanted to do. And it was a great fit for us. And the fact that we started off in February, launched the product in July, and the mobile app in September kind of shows how easy it is, in a way, to ship a product on the internet computer.
Yeah, it's just fascinating to hear that. And so one of the things, I guess, which is, if we think about the future in terms of this whole thing of Web3, I think what Siddharth said was captured it quite nicely about how Web3 enables you to read, write, and own. And so this notion of ownership with respect to decentralized social networks, how do you think that changes things for the actual users? What does that look like from the your average user's perspective that makes it different to Facebook, LinkedIn, all these other ones?
Well, first of all, you don't have you do have the comfort that none of your private data is being collected, because when you sign up for Distrikt, we don't ask for any type of personal data. We don't even you don't have to create a wallet or do any type of key management. You don't need to give us details about your gender, demographics, and stuff like that. We're not interested in your shopping preference, because we're not selling you anything. And we haven't implemented any advertising tools. But to circle back to my point about community and empowering the community that brings the actual value to the product, our community could decide that they don't agree with us and they do want to implement or maybe fund the implementation of an advertising model on Distrikt, and that's perfectly fine, because the product is built for them. So when it comes to their data, they can decide, I want my data to be collected in a particular way, but that is 100% their option. So while your content that you post on Distrikt is public and it can be seen by other Distrikt users, you don't have to provide any type of personal identification or data in order to join the platform. And I think that in itself, even in this early stage of the product, is pretty revolutionary.
Absolutely. And this whole idea, and of course the panels about how to prepare for this privacy driven future, and what you're talking to there is a fantastic example of, well, what it looks like from the individual user's perspective, in terms of they can opt in to maybe share a bit more about themselves, but certainly that's not the default. The default is that they don't need to tell anyone information about themselves, so to speak. There's obviously sorry, go on.
Yeah, because on Web 2, it's obvious that privacy lost the battle with convenience, right? And we kind of have this myth that we need to share all our data in order to be good digital citizens. And we don't really believe in that. So in order to sign up for Distrikt, all you need is your biometric access, and it never leaves your phone or your device. And that's, again, something that we really liked about the internet identity. But we definitely need to do more to dispel this myth that privacy is an imperative only if you have something to hide. Privacy is a human right for a reason and not a privilege. And you do have the right to be yourself in a digital space without it being anybody's business.
There's a reason why you have doors on houses and everyone doesn't live in glass boxes, right?
Yeah.
So going a little bit deeper into the privacy side of things, with one of the things with the well-known cryptocurrency networks such as Bitcoin and the blockchain technologies like Ethereum, Solana, and so on, there was always this idea of what happens on these blockchains happens kind of in public view. You have anonymity, but you don't have privacy on them. But there's been a lot of changes in terms of I guess from a research perspective, all these technologies evolving at a very rapid rate. And Jens, being someone who's a cryptographer by background, what are kind of the key innovations that are starting to make this privacy possible? Like Andra says, you can actually support privacy within the Distrikt network, and so there's clearly some key building blocks beyond just blockchain, because blockchain in its most simplistic form is kind of a it provides transparency and trust, but that kind of goes against what we want with privacy. So what's kind of the key enabler here?
Yeah, so I think in the concrete case of Distrikt and other dApps running on the internet computer, I think that's really a question of what the application layer offers, right? So as a user, I mean, you can read, and that's something you do within milliseconds, right? And there's just not time to have consensus about what you want to write on a blockchain, right? So in some sense, if your response time is really quickly, it's anonymous from the dApp's perspective, right? The smart contract just doesn't have the time to write on, know anything about that. So that's basically just reading the state, right? So you get a very strong guarantee just right out of the bat there, right? And of course, the convenience of speed as well. If you go the other way, right? I mean, when you actually do want to interact with a dApp and you want to write something to that dApp, right? Then you can do that as well, right? That's what we call an update call on the internet computer. And of course, there's nothing that prevents a dApp from storing all information about the writes that the users make and sell it to somebody, right? So in some sense, there's no guarantee of privacy unless the dApp wants to provide it, right? So it's really a question about what the dApp developers want to provide to the users. What the internet computer does provide, and I think a lot of other blockchains provide, is a lot of transparency, right? Because you can actually potentially, you can look at the code, you can verify that this is what it compiles into, and this is what gives you the dApp, right? And so you can do a lot of, you can sort of like do a lot of checks yourself if you're a sophisticated user, right? Something which, there's no such thing on Web 2, right? You just have some server that's serving you something, and something happens with your data afterwards. And I think the really big advantage we have in Web 3, right, is that we can give users this kind of transparency of what is happening to their data. And even stronger than that, right, we can also put governance systems in place so users can actually vote on what should happen with the data.
Yeah, that's absolutely. I was just seeing here we've had like our first question come in about this, and I think it's a great question for Siddharth on this side, and that's why do we need so many blockchains?
Thanks, Conor, for that. I think we do need many blockchains because each one of them is providing a special functionality. So just to kind of level set, like what is a blockchain probably, or how would we define a blockchain, right? So it could be a network essentially, which is specialized to achieve a particular function, industry objective, and then also tries to or aspires to become a platform if it wants, so that people can then build applications on top, right? So either they'll be users of the network itself of a blockchain or the applications on top, right? Now these, if we agree with that kind of a definition of a layer one or a network or a blockchain, then there would be multiple cases in which you will need multiple different networks. So let's take, for example, some of the substrate-based chains, which there are 200 plus, but there are private permissioned stablecoin operations, essentially serving for livelihood of 1 million plus end users in refugee scenarios in Jordan and Bangladesh, right? So that would be one particular, let's say, a private permissioned ledger. There would be a pharma supply chain, and among the big pharmas who are daily kind of tracking, or like live actually by the second tracking product provenances and kind of costs and balances between wholesalers and stuff like that. There would be other, a little more open DeFi networks, right? And there's a community of a lot of different blockchains. There are smart contracting platforms. Long story short, and of course we haven't touched like payments and NFTs and gaming, of which there are again very highly specific chains, because each one of them is a network of its own, is a community of its own, and they want to have models of their own, right? So you do need these specific protocols, and then you can kind of unlock functionalities on top. Where Polkadot tries to come in is have them communicate with each other.
So if I can add to that, so I think what we need is a variety of many distributed applications. It's not clear to me that we need that many blockchains, right? Because there's also some measure of security you get by having more people backing the same blockchain and going into the same consensus protocol. So I think there's a lot to be said for enabling dApps to talk to each other, right? Whether that's sort of like done on a blockchain level, like Polkadot is doing it, or sort of like done on as the internet computer doing by making it very easy for the dApps to talk to each other, right? I think those are viable approaches, and I think we certainly want to have like as many and diverse applications as possible. But I do think that in the blockchain space we will see sort of maybe less diversity in completely different blockchains that are running. I don't think we need all of them, right? But then, of course, they can have different sort of like underlying characteristics, and maybe there's need for more than just one type, right? But I think it's really about, if we look at it from the user and developer perspective, right? It's about dApp diversity, not about blockchain diversity.
That's great that Jens and I, we have a different point of view here, right? Like Polkadot essentially has publicly committed to hundreds of parachains or parallel running chains in parallel, achieving composability across, having a shared network security, and then having kind of composable features on the dApp level, but then also app level, right? So we already see that happening on Kusama network and soon on Polkadot, wherein different blockchains are collaborating, but then depending on functionalities for other chains. And this is more so even unlocked on common good parachains, which then kind of Polkadot kind of stands behind, right? But fully value like Jens' opinion as well. Like that's the beauty and diversity of the fast evolving ecosystem that we live in.
Exactly, and being here in these early days as well, you know, people are planting flags, and you know, who knows where we're going to be in 10 years' time. But this is, yeah, well, what's so fun about being here now. Looking at some of the other questions here, I think there's a great one here as well for Andra about tokens. Basically, do all of these dApps need a token? Does Distrikt use a token?
Distrikt doesn't use a token at the moment, but it does have plans to have a governance token. I think in the case of Distrikt and decentralized social media networks, governance is a great use case for a token and a great reason to have a token, because you, as I've said before, we are very partial to having, you know, the user sovereignty and the user governance part of our vision become a reality. And relying on other tokens to do this job that requires a specific design that fits the needs of this specific application would be kind of difficult, actually. It wouldn't, it would create multiple layers of dependency that we don't really want. If we wanted that, we would have been in with 2, depending on AWS again, right? We do want Distrikt to become this autonomous, self-reliant entity that can actually govern itself. And the token in that regard is pretty powerful. So there are plans. We expect it to happen next year, but we don't have a fixed date. We are also waiting for the SNS feature from DFINITY, which would be very interesting. I think it will basically revolutionize the way projects decentralize themselves. It's like plug-in governance. So yeah, 2022 would be the year where we experiment with the decentralized social network token.
And will a part of that actually be transitioning to a DAO, or decentralized autonomous organization, which I know is certainly a hot topic at the moment? And is that a key part of it?
Well, I think the SNS itself will be the DAO, much like the NNS is now serving that function for the internet computer. It would basically be a way that allows the Distrikt users to decide on key features or how they want the platform to evolve, the direction it wants to go, the priorities that it needs to have, and most especially where does the funding go, right? Because in the case of the SNS, all the funds go in the treasury and they're being managed by that particular entity governed by the user. So that's, I think that automatically will make Distrikt a sort of decentralized autonomous organization. Not very clear like about the definition of DAOs right now, because they encompass so many different things, like how decentralized, how autonomous, what type of organization. It's a very broad spectrum, but I think Distrikt will definitely fit into one of these categories of a DAO.
Yeah, yeah. And so just for those people who haven't heard about it, so from what I understand, the SNS is the service nervous system on the internet computer, which will allow people to create these sort of governance type structures for projects.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if I can chip in here. So indeed, so we have the network nervous system is the governance system used for the internet computer, and we're now offering these service network systems, which is essentially giving other projects the ability to use the same type of governance. So it comes with the possibility of tokenization and voting and putting proposals in place and things like that.
A very eagerly anticipated feature. So we've got just under 4 minutes left of the panel here, and I think it's probably a good opportunity to kind of round up with everyone to have a fairly quick response to a couple of questions. And so we'll go through each of you in turn, starting with Siddharth here. And the questions are, first of all, what are going to be the big things that happen in 2022 with respect to Web3 and its evolution? And what's Web 4 going to look like? So again, each person's got less than a minute to do this, so we need to keep it short, but it'd be great to hear your responses, starting with Siddharth and then Jens and then Andra.
Thank you, Conor, for putting me on the spot. We agreed it will be alphabetical, but I'm happy to take the first shot. Well, Web 4, no clues. Even Web 3 is so exciting, and the world is it will probably look very different in a few years. Who knows what applications and what collaborations and what communities we'll end up building. It's tough to imagine the Facebooks and the Ubers of the world 30 years in advance, or hopefully 20 and 10 now. So no comments on Web 4 as of now. 2022, very exciting, at least for blockchain industry and Polkadot. We are seeing a lot more parachains or parathreads going live, and a lot more plan. So achieving cross-chain collaboration, different chains talking to each other, unlocking functionalities, and a lot more interest in public networks from enterprises, from regulators who might have been a little more privacy or in closed environments a little bit before. So that's kind of my wish and excitement for next year.
Yeah, so supercharging the interop and more networks. Jens? You're muted.
Sorry, okay. So yeah, I guess, so we just launched a ton of proposals for 3-year research plans that I'm asking the community to tell us which ones of those they would like us to go ahead with. So that's something that's being voted on in, I guess, next week or something like that. One part of that, which is very pertinent to this panel, is about privacy. So we have 2 technologies we're suggesting to explore. One is a trusted execution environment, where you essentially trust the hardware to deliver some privacy and confidentiality. And the other one is multi-party computation, which are cryptographic techniques. So you don't have to trust any single node that's running the network, but you just they jointly do the computation. So I think there's some exciting stuff for us to do in terms of adding more privacy and more confidentiality to the internet.
Computation and exciting research. And finally, Andra.
For Web 4, I think the goal should be mass market adoption. Like, we should be able to call it the next level when we do have at least a couple of products that are, decentralized, blockchain-based, and mass adopted. And what was the other one? Next year, basically, what it developed. I think we'll see a lot of a continuation, basically, of artists and content creators driving, adoption of crypto and awareness to people that otherwise wouldn't have had a lot of interest in, technicalities of it. So I think that's a trend that will continue into 2022.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for your. It's been a really fun panel to run, and I'll hand over to Daniel.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Conor.
Very well put panel. I think I'll keep one quote from Andra earlier this week. Andra said that you don't have to be the product to enjoy the product, right? And I think it's a very nice definition for what Web3 is, right? Thank you very much. Also, thanks to the audience for asking questions as usual. It's very fun. So I hope you can still ask more questions. Thank you very much, and see you in the next panel.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.